How to write like Joan Didion, tips and insights. Joan Didion, who died recently, was one of America's greatest writers, penning articles, essays, novels, screenplays and memoir. And she was extraordinarily good at all of them. In this write-up-close investigation, I'm going to look at what we more aspiring writers can learn from her approach and her habits. In short, how we can all write more like Joan. Craft up close. Though describing herself as a slow study, Joan was a voracious student of writing craft. When asked her influences, she said, "I always say Hemingway because he taught me how sentences worked. When I was 15 or 16, I would type out his stories to learn how the sentences worked. I taught myself to type at the same time. A few years ago, when I was teaching a course at Berkeley, I reread A Farewell to Arms and fell right back into those sentences. I mean, they're perfect sentences, very direct sentences, smooth rivers, clear water over granite, no sinkholes." Let's have a look at the opening of A Farewell to Arms. In the late summer of that year, we lived in a house in a village that looked across the river and the plain to the mountains. In the bed of the river there were pebbles and boulders, dry and white in the sun, and the water was clear and swiftly moving and blue in the channels. Troops went by the house and down the road, and the dust they raised powdered the leaves of the trees. The trunks of the trees too were dusty, and the leaves fell early that year, and we saw the troops marching along the road, and the dust rising and the leaves stirred by the breeze falling, and the soldiers marching, and afterward the road bare and white except for the leaves. Now Joan's notes on this were, only one of the words has 3 syllables, 22 have 2, the other 103 have 1, 24 of the words of the 15 are and. There are 4 commas. And in a New Yorker article she went on to say, "You care about the punctuation or you don't, and Hemingway did. You care about the ands and the buts or you don't, and Hemingway did. You think something is in shape to be published or you don't, and Hemingway didn't." To craft more like Joan then, find a writer you admire and copy out their sentences. Choose a descriptive excerpt maybe, where you could write on a similar subject. Then do some similar analysis. Does your role model favour single-syllable words, like Hemingway for instance? Do certain words crop up repeatedly? And what sort of punctuation do they use? Joan acknowledged having both a perfectionist streak and a controlling one, but it wasn't just Hemingway who helped hone her craft. Talking about her work at Vogue, she said, "Vogue was an eccentric and in some ways an exotic education, but there was about it an invigorating strictness. We did not miss deadlines, we did not make mistakes, we learned fast or we did not stay. How to put a couple of unwieldy dependent clauses through the typewriter and roll them out transformed into one simple sentence of precisely 39 characters. I did stay. I counted characters during the day and wrote a novel at night." Now you get the sense that Joan was always learning about writing, never cocksure, arrogant about it, often even towards the end of her career, a bit anxious and uncertain about how good her work was. She gives further accounts of John Gregory Dunn, her writer husband and herself, close studying excerpts of writing they admired, so as to learn how they work. Picture your story. Especially in her novels, Joan Didion said she wrote to a vivid picture in her mind's eye. Her early novel Run River started with an image of a house on a river, while, played as it lays, her Hollywood novel was triggered by an image of a girl in a white dress being paged at 1 p.m. in the morning. Of these images, she said, the picture tells you how to arrange the words. The arrangement of words tells you or tells me what's going on in the picture. If I knew what it meant, I wouldn't need to write it. To write more like Joan, then, you may want to find images to inspire your writing. And as well as a scene, of course, you can create mood boards of characters, likes, their likes and dislikes and settings. You may want to doodle images of characters or settings. Where you've got a distinctive theme, you may wish to explore that through images. Even if you're not inclined to create images yourself, you'll always find it useful to ask, what picture am I creating for my audience to have in their mind's eye here? And this advice runs into the next tip. Questions as motive. With her image clear in her mind, Joan Didion would then ask, what is going on here? Her questioning was forensic and relentless. She said, I wanted not a window on the world, but the world itself. In The Year of Magical Thinking, her account of life after her husband dies, she describes how as a child she got a sense of meaning itself being in the rhythms of words, sentences and paragraphs. As she starts this account, she says, the way I write is who I am or have become. Yet this is a case in which I wish I had, instead of words and their rhythms, a cutting room, equipped with Avid, a digital editing system on which I could touch a key and collapse the sequence of time. Show you simultaneously all the frames of memory that come to me now, let you pick the takes, the marginally different expressions, the variant readings of the same lines. This is a case in which I need more than words to find the meaning. This is a case in which I need whatever it is I think or believe to be penetrable, if only for myself. Now this word penetrable leaps out to me, and if you're one of my writing students, you'll recall that I obsess about what writers do to readers, about being really clear in our intention. What are the verbs that describe what we want to do? Joan Didion had the knack of asking extremely penetrating questions about her subject matter, whether fact or fiction. She penetrated forensically. To grow more Joan, then, take something that fascinates you, no matter how small, and ask yourself 5 questions about it, starting with why. Start to truly penetrate what your subject means. Go into the vivid detail and specifics of your subject matter. Let's say you want to use London as a setting for your work. You might want to ask, why choose London? Because it's exciting. Why is it exciting? There's many diverse people involved in lots of diverse activities. Why is diversity exciting? Because you can show contrast between a privileged white banker, say, and a marginalised black cleaner. Now, why would that contrast be interesting? Because they're on different planets, but they will have some things in common. Why would they relate to each other? Because it could be on the tube together or overlap at the office, or the banker could hire the cleaner for their home, or the cleaner could see the banker doing something they shouldn't be doing. You see how this is generating material. And once you've done your why questions, you can, of course, move on to some what questions and some how questions. If you do this exercise and it yields revelations for you, then I would love to hear them. Thank you. Okay, observe and immerse. Quite exceptionally, I think, amongst writers, Joan Didion had the ability to move from a cool, detached viewpoint to complete immersion in whatever she was writing about. This capacity for detachment made her funny. In her first column for Life magazine, she wrote, "We are here on this island in the middle of the Pacific in lieu of filing for divorce." Now, who wouldn't want to read on after that? The New York Times said, "The voice is always precise, the tone unsentimental, the view unabashedly subjective. She takes things personally." And this personal subjective view makes for such powerful writing. This is from Blue Nights, which was published in 2011. I know what the fear is. The fear is not for what is lost. What is lost is already in the wall. What is lost is already behind the locked door. The fear is for what is still to be lost. In that same New York Times article, her husband said, Joan's really a rather cheerful person who drives a bright yellow Corvette. In person, she doesn't have a dark view of life. She just doesn't expect a lot from it or from people. Joan understood that it's possible to hold two contrasting views on the same subject. In an interview at New York Public Library, she talks of how, as a writer, you can both feel this is an impossible subject to write about, and I am writing about it and it's going pretty well. She understood how we hold contradictory ideas, and often her work explored the tension between those contradictions. To experiment with two different perspectives now, rather like the two that I've just described, just observe where you are at the moment and jot down a few specifics of what you can see as straight facts. Then, either as yourself or a character you've created, look at your surroundings again and pick a couple of items or aspects. Use one of them to trigger memory and describe this. And use one to trigger your imagination. What may happen, and describe this. So, you've got your facts, you've got a memory association, you've got an imagination association. And now you may like to note which one of these approaches comes easiest to you and which one do you enjoy best. They may not be the same thing. Value truth over likability. Joan gave the impression that the quest to find out what is really going on in a situation, to be a forensic researcher and investigator, mattered more than being liked or thought to be attractive. She was distinctively her own woman and said, I realised a woman could hedge her bets without hemming and hawing, without making nice, without poeticism, without sounding pleasant or sweet, without deference. Looking at and listening to her being interviewed, she strikes me as a writer exceptionally concerned to tell her truth as she saw it. Linda Coyle, interviewing her for the Paris Review, asked, You have said that writing is a hostile act. I always wanted to ask you why. Joan replies, It's hostile in that you're trying to make somebody see something the way you see it, trying to impose your idea, your picture. It's hostile to try to wrench around somebody else's mind that way. Quite often you want to tell somebody your dream, your nightmare. Well, nobody wants to hear about someone else's dream, good or bad. Nobody wants to walk around with it. The writer is always tricking the reader into listening to the dream. To write more like Joan, then, we need to think for ourselves, which is challenging in these days of social media dictates encouraging us to conform to tribal views. Ask yourself, have you got a fresh and possibly controversial take on something that you'd like to write about? I'm not aiming to get you cancelled here, but thinking rigorously and perhaps in a somewhat contrarian manner about something can be very helpful in just getting a fresh point of view. Freshness in Joan's take on things has been mentioned a lot when people who gave her breaks described why they did. It's interesting to speculate how Joan Didion, were she writing today, would handle the world of social media. My guess is she wouldn't say much, but let others do the talking for her. About her novels, she said, novels by women tend to be described even by their publishers as sensitive. I'm not sure this is so true anymore, but it certainly was at the time, and I didn't much like it. I dealt with it the same way I dealt with everything. I just tended my own garden, didn't pay much attention, behaved, I suppose, deviously. I mean, I didn't actually let too many people know what I was doing. Collage your work. Joan took a collaging approach to her work, assembling scenes and unexpected elements. So her book on dealing with the aftermath of her husband's death features a section on Emily Post's book Etiquette and its useful advice, which was first written in 1922. Here she describes how she wrote her first novel, Run River. I wrote the first half of Run River at night over a period of years. I was working at Vogue during the day, and at night I would work on these scenes for a novel in no particular sequence. When I finished a scene, I would tape the pages together and pin the long strips of pages on the wall of my apartment. Maybe I wouldn't touch it for a month or two. Then I'd pick a scene off the wall and rewrite it. When I had about 150 pages done, I showed them to 12 publishers, all of whom passed. The 13th, Ivan Obolensky, gave me an advance. Like Hemingway, Joan emphasised the importance of first sentences, calling the first sentence the gesture and the second sentence the commitment. She also commented that last sentences should make you go back and start reading from the start. We live in times where it's notably useful to be versatile as a writer, able to pen articles maybe, books, make video and have a podcast. Collaging your work, keeping mind maps or doodle maps of it, and having a strong associative approach in its creation will help with this. If you've a current work in progress, is it mind mapped sufficiently? And can you store this in your vault, digital or otherwise, of possible future value? Employ ritual and rhythm. Joan Didion has spoken of the value of a regular routine in writing, how it gives work rhythm. In The Year of Magical Thinking, Joan repeats a refrain through the books. Life changes fast, life changes in the instant. You sit down to dinner and life as you know it ends. The question of self-pity. And she used ritual and routine in her creation and editing. The most important is that I need an hour alone before dinner with a drink to go over what I've done that day. I can't do it late in the afternoon because I'm too close to it. Also, if the drink helps, it removes me from the pages. So I spend this hour taking things out and putting other things in. Then I start the next day by redoing all of what I did the day before, following these evening notes. So, to write more like Joan, I'm not suggesting you up your alcohol intake, though she did say it helped. But establishing a ritual or routine will make you more productive. But then you probably know this, and you may find it helpful to create a refrain, almost like a mantra, for whatever is your current work in progress. Like she did with Life Changes Fast. To sum up then, you may want to experiment with writing more like Joan through using craft up close, tightly studying somebody you admire, picturing your story using visual images. Remember you're answering questions as motivation. Observe closely and immerse yourself in the subject. Be both detached reporter and experiencer of emotion, of memory and imagination. Go for truth more than being liked. Use a collage approach to assembling your work, and remember the importance of rhythm and ritual in your writing. I absolutely love Joan Didion's work. I love the detail and specificity of it and the delicacy combined with this kind of very detached, cool reporting style that she does. Very cleanly written. I found some inspirational words that she wrote at a commencement address at UC Riverside, and I'd just like to leave you with these. I'm not telling you to make the world better, because I don't think the progress is necessarily part of the package. I'm just telling you to live in it, not just to endure it, not just to suffer it, not just to pass through it, but to live in it, to look at it, to try to get the picture, to live recklessly, to take chances, to make your own work and take pride in it, to seize the moment. And if you ask me why you should bother to do that, I could tell you that the grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Nor do they sing there, or write, or argue, or see the tidal bore on the Amazon, or touch their children. And that's what there is to do, and get it while you can, and good luck at it. Thank you, Joan Didion, for your marvellous words, and I do hope you found this useful to my writing students and others who may be listening to this. Thanks a lot. See you again soon.